Hi, I'm Debi Peverill from Hales Financial Training Group, and this video is explaining how to fill in your TD1 federal form for the year 2022. So the form itself is 2 pages long. It is divided up into steps. At the beginning of the first page, you need to put in your name, first and last, your date of birth, your address, including postal code, and your social insurance number. Okay? The purpose of this form is you fill it in and you give it to your employer, and your employer uses this form to determine how much income tax to take from your paychecks. This form does not change your tax return. This form is only about having the right amount of income tax taken from your paycheck. And you will see that some of the decisions you make about how you fill in this form will change that number. The number that was deducted is not going to change your tax return. So once we get past the name and address, the next part, box 1, is your basic personal amount. And the deal with this is that if your income is going to be under $155,625 this year, then the amount you're allowed to make before you pay tax in Canada is $14,398. If you are going to make more than $155,265, then you need to fill in the worksheet, because you're going to be allowed to have less of a deduction the more income you make over the 155. So for most people, the amount of this exemption is $14,398. Number 2 is the caregiver amount for infirm children under the age of 18. So the definition of an infirm person includes somebody who has received the disability tax credit, and is intended to include people whose daily activities take longer to perform than the regular activities. So the thing about this is, again, this is filling it in on this form will reduce the amount of income tax your employer takes. It won't affect your income tax return unless you in fact qualify for this deduction. So the amount that you can claim on the form is $2,350 for each infirm child who was born in 2005 or later. Okay. Number 3, going from children to older people. Number 3 is the age amount. If you are 65 or older on December 31st of 2022 and your income is under $39,826, then the amount you can put in the box 3 is $7,898. This deduction is reduced by earning higher income. So if your income is going to be over $39,828, but less than $92,480, then you're going to have to fill in the worksheet to prorate the amount you're going to be able to claim here. If your income is over $9,280, then you're not going to get any of this age exemption, period. So you would just put a 0 here if you're over 65 and your income is over that $92,480. The pension income amount. The pension income is a flat $2,000 for the first, it includes any pension income except for Canada Pension Plan and Old Age Security. So if you have at least $2,000 in pension income, you can put $2,000 in this box. If you have less than $2,000 in pension income, put the amount you think that will be less, because you're only going to get a deduction for the amount you receive up to $2,000. Tuition. If you are a student enrolled in anything, post-secondary, university, college, or anything post-secondary, and you pay more than $100 in tuition, then you put the amount of tuition that you paid in the year in this box. So this is for 2022, paid in 2022. It doesn't include things like scholarships. This is just tuition that you paid. Even if your parents paid it, this is going to go on your return first. So the amount of your tuition in box 5. Box 6 is a disability amount. If you have received a disability tax credit, which you got by filling in the Form T2201 and having it approved by CRA, then the amount of disability credit is $8,870, and that's the number you would put in box 6. If you are disabled but you haven't applied for the disability tax credit, then you don't put the amount in box 6. Box 7 is for your spouse or common law partner. If you support this person, then you're entitled to a deduction for that, which of course will reduce your income taxes, so should be on the form. The deal here is that if you figure out the amount that you think your spouse is going to make during the year, okay, and the amount that we're going to have for a deduction here is going to be $14,398, which you'll see is the personal exemption again. You're entitled to claim that personal exemption for a spouse or common law partner who has no income. If your spouse does have income, then you have to deduct the amount of the income from this $14,398 and put the lesser number in this box. That is box 7. Box 8 is eligible dependents. So this is a situation where you do not have a spouse or common law partner, but you do have a child who is dependent on you. So it applies to people without partners, but with children. Same rules. You can take that deduction for the $14,398 less the income of this person, this dependent upon you. Okay? And there's some adjustments there for whether they're infirm. If they're a dependent who's also infirm, then there's an additional amount, which is the caregiver amount. And that you see in box 9 if it's for a eligible dependent or spouse. So that's the situation where you either don't have a spouse and do have a dependent, or you do have a spouse who is dependent. The caregiver amount for dependents who are age 18 or over, that's a different person than the person that you talked about in box 8. Okay? And all of this is dependent on that person's income. So you would take a look at the worksheet, which we're going to talk about last, and you take the amounts that you're entitled to as a deduction and subtract that person's income from the caregiver amount to figure out how much you can in fact deduct. So that is box 9 if it's for an eligible dependent or an equivalent to spouse, or it's box 10 if it's for an eligible dependent that's over the age of 18. Okay, box 11. These are amounts that are going to be transferred to you from your spouse. So box 12 is amounts that are transferred from a dependent. So this is a different dependent than the spouse or the eligible dependent that we just talked about in box 11. So this could be a child who is able to transfer tuition to their parents. Okay, even though the parents, they could have spouses, everything could be, no other deductions could be available, but the kid can transfer the tuition. So if you're in a situation where you've got a dependent who has tuition or a disability amount that they're not going to use, then this amount is going to go in box 12. Keep in mind that the tuition is a maximum of $5,000 that can be transferred. A person can deduct lots of tuition, but they can only transfer $5,000 a year. So that is the end of the first page. What you now do is you add up all of the boxes from box 1 through to box 12, and you put the total you get in box 13. If you don't think a box applies, put a 0 in the box so that you know that you've considered it. If I would prefer you not leave it blank. Put a dash or put a 0. We add all that up, and we've got our total claim amount, which goes in box 13. The second page of the form has a couple of things on it that are of interest. First of all, if you've got more than one employer at the same time, you need to put a tick mark in that box that says more than one employer at the same time. And that's because you're only entitled to one set of these credits. When you add all of this up and put it in box 13, you're only getting that once on your tax return. So the second employer you have in a year, or the second employer you have at the same time, should not use those credits again. If that was to happen, the only thing that will happen to you is that you're going to owe more tax when you file your tax return. And most people would rather have their tax deducted at source than to owe the money come the end of April when they file their return. There's also a place to tick if your income is going to be less than the amount in box 1. Okay? So you're not going to earn even as much as the claim amount. No one should take any tax deductions from you. You can tick that box on page 2 as well. There's a couple of other things. There's some stuff here about non-residents. Non-residents is totally beyond the scope of this video. You should seek competent professional advice if you're a non-resident of Canada before you fill in this form. There are also provincial forms for every province. The other two we do videos for would be Nova Scotia, which is the province I live in, and Ontario, which we have done by request. If you would like additional tax taken from your paycheck so that you will get a refund for sure come the end of the year, then you would fill in the amount you want deducted in the box on the back of the form which says additional tax to be deducted. The only other thing on here is if you don't want as much tax taken as is indicated, there's another form you can do that on, which is the form 1213, which you would get then from CRA and give to your employer. Okay. So I did mention that I would say a few things around the worksheet. So the TD1 form itself is 2 pages. The TD1 worksheet is another separate page, and there are a couple of boxes on this. The first one is the line 1, where you figure out your personal amount, your basic personal amount, and this of course only applies to people whose income is over $155,625. So this isn't you, you don't need to worry about it. The next part is the age amount, where people whose income is over $38,826 and they're getting the age amount, they need to fill in this part of the form. Canada Caregiver Amount, there's 2 amounts there, the ones that tie into line 9 and the ones that tie into line 10. And basically what's going on there is there's an additional caregiver amount available if you have infirm dependents, but it's dependent on their income. So it starts with a base amount of income of $25,195, subtracts the dependent's income from that, and if you get an amount that is higher than $7,525, you put in $7,525, and then you subtract from that what you've already claimed on line 7 or 8 to determine if you're going to have an additional caregiver amount. So that's fairly complicated, and again, this doesn't affect your income tax. All this does is determine the amount of tax that's going to be taken from your paycheck. So that's how you fill in the TD1 form. Hopefully it made it easier for you to do that. Please send me questions if there is anything that isn't clear.